Tears are drizzling down young Gabriela's face as she continues kicking and screaming endlessly on the back seat of the young teenage couple's vehicle as she notices dried up blood rusting all over her hands. Blood from her father, mother, brother, neighbors, and the young couple she's just slaughtered. Blood rests on her hands at this time. She's acting innocent, all the while plotting her next move. The road's swarming with cops, every square inch for the next mile going north and south on Route 666 is flooded with police vehicles. Everyone's scratching their heads. Every single officer surrounding the murder scene is attempting to figure out what events have led up to this very moment. No one's more interested in this case more than Detective Ashley Pierce, the lead detective assigned to solve this horrific case. Tragedy on top of tragedy has occurred. She spoke with a cigarette leaving her mouth that she just sparked with her lighter just seconds before. Her partner Jake Wiley's full attention is targeted directly at her. She's breathtaking. Her long red hair and freckled face just magnifies her beauty. Prom Queen is what she was just over 5 years ago. The runner-up to Miss America was her title just 3 years before this night. Many speculate was the primary reason why she became a cop and now a lead detective. Her beauty is evident, but even more so her knowledge and her skills as a detective is immaculate. Words are flowing from out of her mouth while Jake is fully caught up in just watching her beauty placed on full display. "Jake, do you hear me? Let's go," she shouted as she was finished speaking to him. The wind is blowing violently. The trees are attempting to fly away from their planted positions. Her focus turned away from her partner onto the marked police vehicle where the two teenagers were just murdered. Young Gabriela is bawling her eyes out endlessly as Detective Ashley Pierce cautiously approaches the vehicle. A flock of officers are swarming around the vehicle, engaging in private conversations about what they believe just took place in this vehicle. Attempting to calm down Gabriela is Officer Peters, a longtime officer of the A.K.A. Police Department. A look of bewilderment sits atop of his face as he notices two detectives with their badges dangling from their necks approaching the vehicle. Gabriela hasn't been receptive to anyone thus far, and he doesn't want to further upset this young, seemingly distraught little girl. As the detectives got within a dozen feet of the vehicle, Officer Peters rushed over in their direction to prevent them from getting any closer. "Don't take another step closer," he blurted out immediately, striking Detective Ashley Pierce's nerves. She ignored his words even as he stood before her and her partner attempting to block them from the vehicle. Detective Ashley Pierce has faced sexism, discrimination, along with sexual harassment over the years as she's been a detective by her fellow officers and even detectives. It bothered her at first, however she's learned to deal with it. Times now are much simpler than before is what she always reminds herself about. That prevents her from acting out of character. What she knows is what everyone is expecting of her. However, she won't. The position she's in and how quickly she's earned this position is much bigger than she is. In order for her to open up doors for the other women in the A.K.A. Police Department, it's up to her actions today, in the past, and in the future that will determine if the most notorious anti-woman police department in history finally changes for the better. She maneuvered around Officer Peters like a slick spy. He yet again slid before her with his focus fully tuned into her. "Officer," he says, however, before he could continue, she immediately interrupted him. "It's Detective," she replies swiftly. "It's Detective Ashley Peters, and this case now belongs to my partner and I. Now, if you would be so kindly and please inform your fellow officers to step aside." She backs down to no one. She's fell for a no one, and it shows in her actions. Her confidence never lacks. She knows the power she's earned, which is why she never minds displaying it to anyone who offends her in any way. A stare down ensued. However, Officer Peters knew he was in a lose-lose predicament, which caused him to eventually back down moments later. He conceded without even uttering that word. He just backed away from her as he suddenly signaled to his fellow officers to back away from the vehicle containing young Gabriela. Detective Pierce wanted to smile from ear to ear. However, she just held in her excitement. Nothing's better to her than putting a douchebag in his place, which is exactly what she had done. The other officers made room for her along with her partner to make their way over to the vehicle, where Gabriela suddenly calmed down. Her eyes are bloodshot red. Dry tears are staining her cheeks as she takes a look at Detective Ashley Pierce's eyes. She's avoiding Detective Pierce's partner at all costs because she's been eavesdropping on all of their conversations going on around her. She knows Detective Pierce is in charge of this investigation. She knows in order for her to escape this situation without being handcuffed and hauled away to prison, that she must win over Detective Pierce at all costs. She's examining Detective Pierce from head to toe. Her objective is to figure out just what kind of individual she's about to face. In Gabriela's young years on this earth, cop crime dramas have stolen her attention over the years. The criminals who got away with murder caught her attention, but nowhere near as much as the ones who were caught and sent to prison. Those losers are who Gabriela studied the most. Mainly how they moved and the actions they took, which led to their terrible predicaments they've all ended up facing. Mistake after mistake led to them all losing their cases, which is what Gabriela plans on avoiding. In her mind, she knows based on the evil glance Detective Pierce has been giving her from the moment their eyes met, that she's not on her side. Detective Pierce is continuing to examine her as though she's gazing through her soul. Getting away with multiple murders was what she planned on doing, and it's what she expected to do with dealing with those other officers. However, now things won't be as simple as she expected before Detective Pierce arrived. Detective Pierce won't remove her focus from her, not even the slightest. It's aching Gabriela's nerves to the point that her blood is boiling. She's nervous, however that emotion she's burying deep down inside of her. That emotion can never be placed on display, especially at this time. Gabriela took a deep breath before she suddenly released more tears from her eyes, almost on command. Gabriela took a look around before she blurted out, "Where's my parents?" She took a look at Detective Pierce's partner, who stood right next to her. That caused Detective Pierce to look at her partner as well. She's attempted to read young Gabriela. She'll never judge a book by its cover. She's a detective. How could she ever do such a thing? Especially given that she's learned from her past mistakes. For example, a single mother whose personality appears sweeter than honey charmed her to the point she couldn't expect her to hurt a fly. Judging that woman by her cover caused her to defend her from even being interrogated when that woman was accused of murdering her fiancé. Well, turns out that woman was a sociopath who did kill her husband. By Detective Pierce not bringing her down to the station for an interrogation, that led to more murders being committed by that woman. The murders of her own children, who haunts Detective Pierce's thoughts every single night, is the reason why she refuses to judge a book by its cover ever again. In her mind, from since that case, every alleged criminal that she's come across is guilty until proven innocent. She refuses to look at things any other way. As she gazes back at Gabriela, she's seeing none but evil from inside of the young girl, who began kicking and screaming yet again. "Where's my parents?" she asks, aloud, causing chills to tingle down Detective Ashley Pierce's spine. Suddenly, rumbles of thunder sounded off back to back, as though the heavens could sense the evil coming from within this young girl. Detective Pierce shook her head. She's not buying what this young girl is attempting to sell to her. She has all the facts. She knows Gabriela's parents were gutted like fishers. She can clearly see that was the same fate of the two teenagers being placed in body bags by the coroner workers. One thing is for certain, and that is that young Gabriela was present for all the murders. Where are my parents? She continued to bawl out. Where's my mommy and daddy? Sadness is glued to Gabriela's face. It can't be pried off even if you attempted to with the strength of a million men. Detective Wiley is being sympathetic to the young girl who is seemingly distraught. It's hurting his heart to witness such a soul-crushing sight. His heart is crushed witnessing the visual of this young girl. Detective Pierce isn't at all convinced. Gabriela can tell based on the detective's reactions to her tears. She has no empathy for her, which caused Gabriela to sit up as she stared directly at Detective Pierce. Where's my mommy and daddy? She asked once more while aiming her attention at Detective Pierce. They're dead, Gabriela, replied Detective Pierce bluntly, startling everyone present. Where's my mommy and daddy? She asked while aiming all of her attention at Detective Pierce. They're dead, Gabriela, replied Detective Pierce bluntly, startling everyone present. Are you serious? Detective Wiley questioned her while immediately pulling her aside. Detective Pierce rolled her eyes. She shrugged her partner's hands from off of her shoulders right away. She's swift. She's always thinking. And at this point, her mind is already made up as to how she feels about this young girl. You have got to be kidding me, says Detective Wiley straightforward. I'm not kidding you at all, she replied in a hurry. Her face paints anger. Her anger can be seen from outer space. She sees through Gabriela's behavior. It's just not convincing to her at all. I know exactly what I'm doing, she says as she steps through her partner, bumping him on the shoulder to allow her to make her way back to young Gabriela. She knows she's going about this matter all wrong. Her emotions are getting the very best of her, which she can't continue to allow, which caused her to take several deep breaths to calm her nerves. She meditated right then and there briefly. That brief moment she took to calm herself down was witnessed by young Gabriela as she kept an eye out on her entire surroundings. Detective Pierce took a few more steps in her direction. Suddenly, calmness ran from head to toe of Detective Pierce. Her emotions clouded her judgment, and she can't continue on that same path. That thought led her to taking a seat next to Gabriela, who's covered in blood. What happened to my mommy and daddy? She asked distraughtly. Detective Pierce locked eyes with her concerned partner before returning her attention back to Gabriela. That's something we would like to know, she said sarcastically. She exhaled deeply. Gabriela, your parents were murdered, and so were their neighbors, along with this young teenage couple. Before Detective Pierce could utter another word, she could hear her partner clearing his throat. That rumbling coming from her partner spoke volumes to her without any words rolling from out of his tongue. Gabriela knew what her partner was attempting to do before Detective Pierce realized what he was attempting to do. Gabriela's 10 steps ahead of everyone, which caused her to gently lean over until she was resting her head on the lap of Detective Pierce, who was instantly shocked. Her feelings about Gabriela shifted at that sudden moment, which was precisely what Gabriela's plan was to do, which is win her over. That's what she did at that moment. She could feel the detective combing through her hair with her fingers. Detective Pierce's eyes began to well like a waterfall. Hearing the sound of Gabriela crying yet again melted her heart. Shh. Everything is gonna be just fine, Detective Pierce spoke. I promise you, we will get justice for your parents' deaths. She continued cuddling Gabriela as Gabriela glimpsed over at Detective Pierce's partner, whose face displayed sadness. She has them both right where she wants them, which allowed her to gently reach for Detective Pierce's gun, which sat at her left side. Gabriela gently removed it from her holster, gradually, before she rested it under her left cheek. So you're telling me I don't have a family anymore? Gabriela asked in a sad tone of voice. Where am I going to live and with who? Asked Gabriela. Detective Pierce's heart was crushed. She couldn't ever imagine being placed in a predicament as the one Gabriela has been forced into. Everything will be just fine, says Detective Pierce, who's completely let her guard down when it comes to Gabriela. Get the car started up, Jake. Let's get this girl out of here and to someplace warm, she says, causing her partner to agree. In a matter of minutes, Detective Pierce's right foot was slammed down on the gas pedal as she was rushing to make it back downtown to the precinct. You know, chances are this young girl will be placed in a foster home, says Detective Wiley, causing Detective Pierce to shake her head. It's unfortunate for this young girl. However, protocol must be followed, she responded. She exhaled deeply while shaking her head nonstop. An investigation is ongoing. There are still murders to be solved, so truthfully, who knows what's going to happen to this young girl. Gabriela is resting on the back seat, appearing to be fast asleep, which explains why Detective Pierce is speaking so freely. What are you saying? Detective Wiley asked concernedly. You can't seriously believe this little girl killed all those people, do you? Detective Pierce took a glimpse at the rearview mirror to ensure that Gabriela was sleeping. Once she realized that she was still sleeping, she nodded her head. In a soft tone of voice, she replied, Of course she killed those people. I know she killed her parents and her neighbors, as well as that young teenage couple. I can see the devil in her eyes. She's Satan in the flesh, and she doesn't have me fooled, not even the slightest. Roar! Yelled Gabriela as she banged on the miniature fence separating her from both detectives. Her sadistic side released at that very moment, causing Detective Pierce to swerve, nearly losing complete control of the vehicle. What the hell, shouted Detective Wiley. I told you, that little girl is evil, shouted Detective Pierce as she slammed even harder on the gas pedal. Radio into the lieutenant to let him know we're a few minutes away from the station. Let him know we have the killer in our custody and to be prepared to shoot to kill her if necessary upon our arrival. Detective Wiley was stunned momentarily as he attempted to register precisely where his partner was staying to him. Do it now, she ordered as Gabriela continued banging violently on the fence, causing blood to splatter from her fingertips all over it. Let me go, Gabriela shouted before belching out a thunderous growl. Detective Wiley is in a state of panic. He's completely stunned and caught off guard by what he's witnessing, which took him nearly a minute of watching pure evil being released from Gabriela nonstop for him to register exactly what was going on. It took what felt like an eternity, even as he heard his partner yelling at him before he grabbed a hold of his walkie-talkie to radio into the police station. He's nervous. He's panicking inside and out. Lieutenant Raimondo, you copy? He blurted into the walkie-talkie. I copy, replied the lieutenant instantly. Before Detective Wiley could get another word to jump from out of his mouth, Gabriela yelled, Don't touch me. Stop touching me, Detective Wiley. She went on and on as she cried out for help. Wait, what? Says Detective Wiley in a state of shock. He's witnessing the evil side of this young girl firsthand in the worst way. "What are you doing, Detective Wiley? What are you doing to that young girl?" Lieutenant Ramondo demanded. "I'm not doing anything to her. She's lying," Detective Wiley replied. "Give me that damn walkie-talkie," Detective Pierce ordered, which caused Gabriela to temporarily panic. Detective Pierce is the only person who can stop her, and she knows it. She had to think, and think quickly. That caused her to reach for the gun she had tucked away in her nightgown pocket. "Please put the gun down. Don't shoot me, Detective Pierce," Gabriela cried out. Her words caught Detective Pierce's full attention, even as her lieutenant yelled over and over into the walkie-talkie to figure out just what's currently taking place in that police vehicle. "Talk to me," he yelled. "What's going on?" No words left either the detectives' mouths as they observed Gabriela with a look of horror on their faces as she aimed a gun at Detective Pierce. "See you in hell," Gabriela yelled out loud before she fired a shot striking Detective Pierce in the shoulder, causing her to lose immediate control of the vehicle. The vehicle flew from off of the road instantly, sending it flipping non-stop like a gymnast doing cartwheels. Detective Wiley's body ejected from out of the vehicle, ended his life in a hurry as Gabriela took cover underneath the passenger seat, squeezing as much of her body under it as possible, just to keep herself protected as much as possible. The vehicle flipped over violently, rummaging the vehicle more and more with every flip. What felt like forever with the vehicle flipping over and over finally ended with only the sound of crickets sounded off in the distance. Blurred vision and confusion took over Gabriela briefly as she began looking around for Detective Pierce, whose body rested on the dashboard of the vehicle as blood spilled from all over her. Gabriela sat back on the back seat of the vehicle, breathing heavily. She's relieved. She's a free young lady. She may have to spend the remainder of her life on the run, but it beats her ending up in prison. Her entire left side is throbbing with pain, which was inflicted by this brutal car crash. However, she's still alive, and to her, that's all that counts. Inch by inch, she slid herself over to the back passenger door, which she grabbed a hold of the door handle to open it. But the door wouldn't budge. She slammed her shoulder into the door repeatedly, time and time again, but to no avail. "Ah!" she shouted in fury. She began kicking the door, however it still wouldn't budge, even a little. She began looking around the back seat for something she could use to break her weight from out of the vehicle, where she spotted the pistol resting on the floor. She leaned over to grab it to shoot her way out of the vehicle, but as she did just that, she could hear the words, "Move another inch, and to hell you'll go," Detective Pierce yelled out as she aimed her gun directly at Gabriela, causing Gabriela to freeze.